Now, this December, I have become an absolute Christmas fiend. Like, at the moment that the last firework hit the sky in Liverpool, November the 5th, I wanted to get all my Christmas jumpers out of the wardrobe. I wanted to watch the Gremlins, the Goonies, Muppets Christmas Carol as much as possible. I wanted to listen to Bublé, to Sia's Christmas album, to the Charlie Brown Christmas album as much as possible, day in, day out. I think I was the first in line for the festive bake out of Greg's. Anyone else in that camp? No. You need it, man. Iceland do them now. You can have them on your own at home. But does it ever feel like to you that to get the most out of Christmas, we have to do quite a lot? We have to see every friend that we know. We have to see every possible family member. We have to eat every type of food. In my house, Christmas Day starts with croissants with boursin and ham. I know, I'm a bit posh. I know. And then it goes on to a roast dinner, and we eat every possible side dish, every imaginable vegetable, and then we cram ourselves full with cheese after, then Christmas cake, then mince pies, then if you're lucky, a bit of whiskey. And then while we're doing that, we're watching every Christmas special from the Bake Off to Strictly Come Dancing, whatever's going on, the King's Speech, and then I still have to remember to call my grandma. It's all a lot, isn't it? I just wonder, what if Christmas isn't about consuming and doing and producing and attending everything? I wonder if actually we could find more of the meaning of Christmas if we simply made room for it. The thing is, we aren't strangers to making room for things. Throughout the Christmas period, we will have to make room in our calendar to make sure that we attend the work Christmas party that we don't really want to go to. We have to make room in our lives to call up that stranger just to make sure that he knows that he's got relatives still. If you've got kids, we have to make room to attend a crummy Christingle service yet again. We know what it means to make room for others around this time. According to research, though, the most stressful time on Christmas Day is 9:30 a.m. It's the time when the enormity of the day sinks in. The food you've got to prepare. Have you got all the right gifts? Have you invited the right people? Do you have enough crockery and cutlery and napkins? And 46% of UK people find present buying stressful. 45% of people find the money around Christmas is intense and it gives them anxiety and burden. Surely that's not what it's about, right? To be honest, leading a church around Christmas can be pretty intense. I'm well aware that people invited friends and mates and colleagues and families to church, so I want their experience of church to be a good one. I've got a staff team here, and I want to make sure they're not limping into the new year, but they're feeling refreshed and resourced to go in and have a great start to 2025. I'm a family man. I've got 3 kids. I want to make sure that my kids don't hear that daddy's favorite things about December are just what happened in this building. But they know that their daddy's as excited to be their daddy around Christmas time. The thing is, Christmas becomes so much for us. And it feels like year on year, we pile on stuff on top of stress, on top of anxiety, on top of this thing that started with a baby wrapped in a cloth, lying in a manger, in a barn, between 2 frightened and nervous parents. So can we make room? Can we create space this Christmas for something a little different? The thing is, the Christmas story doesn't actually begin with a baby in a manger and all the people gather around them at all. The Christmas story starts before the creation of the world itself. Christians throughout the ages have believed that God had always intended to be with us, his creation. But we have, and we do in our own ways, just do all we can to say, we've got it, thanks. And like a stroppy teenager, we strive for independence as if our way is going to be way more fulfilling and healthy. And yet God has, throughout the ages, the stories of the Old Testament show us that God is always pursuing a relationship with us, no matter what our foolishness gets up to. And when Christians talk about God, they're talking about something very particular. They're not talking about a white-bearded man on a throne in clouds. That's Zeus or Odin or Jupiter. We're not talking about some kind of cosmic ethereal force. That's Karma or Mother Nature or Jedi. When Christians talk about God, they're talking about a collective, a relationship, a trinity. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, each unique and yet unified. Not three gods, because they do not exist without one another. The Father cannot be a father without a Son, and the Son cannot be a son without the Father. And they both send the Holy Spirit so that you and I may experience, know, and feel the relationship that the Father and Son have. And so in God's very nature is the capacity, ability, and desire to make room for another, to make room for us to enter into that relationship. And so when it came to the signs of the New Testament of God coming to make his home here on earth in flesh as a human, the people who had been waiting for centuries for that to happen start to make room in their own lives to encounter him. The wise men, when they see a star, the prophetic sign of the Messiah coming, they down tools in their home country. They cancel meetings. They reorganize family commitments and change schedules. They take uncomfortable journeys towards Bethlehem, a foreign and religious place, knowing that they'd be treated with suspicion as pagans with a different culture and worldview, and yet they make room in their lives as the idea of not meeting this child was too great to miss. The shepherds, as they're tending their sheep, have an angelic apparition before them telling them that the Messiah that they've been waiting for is coming to liberate them from their everyday, humdrum, normal lives. And they lead them into a way of being, the fullness of life. So they go, leaving behind their livelihood and their security and their sustenance to go and visit this child. The innkeeper, little did he know, in letting this scruffy family on his property, he was making room for them to have this baby that would redefine history and start the largest cultural and religious revolution of all known history. And this is all in response to the God who makes room for us. Now, I didn't grow up going to church at all, not even at Christmas. Oh, shock, horror. Although we did go to a church on school trips once a year, and I was the only boy in an all-female school choir, and so I got to sing the opening verse of Once in Royal David City. Trust me, it was beautiful. I will spare your rendition right now. But the thing is, I had no framework for understanding what this whole church thing was about. I thought Christians were nice, slightly deluded, but nice. And yet before my 16th birthday, just before it, I was having a pint of Stella Artois with my older brother in a pub. And someone came in selling illegal pirated DVDs, going table to table. And we chose the film that we assumed was a historical epic with violence and a foreign language because it makes us feel cultured, doesn't it, reading while watching. And we chose The Passion of the Christ. We watched it that night. I was slightly bleary-eyed from my 2 pints of Stella. And the 15-year-old me, as I was watching it, was not struck necessarily by Jesus' miracles, although they're impressive. I wasn't even struck by Jesus' teaching, although that is wonderful too. The thing that really got me in my 15-year-old self was the company that he kept. This messed up bunch of ragamuffins that he calls his disciples. They were misfits and made mistakes. They said the wrong thing and they did the wrong thing. They buckled under the pressure and they got the wrong end of the stick all the time. And something hit me as I watched that film. Maybe I could be counted amongst Jesus' friends. And so the next day, I asked the only Christian that I knew well enough that they weren't going to get super weird or sacrifice me or kidnap me or take me to a cult. I asked them if I could go with them to church the next Sunday. And when I walked in, yes, everyone was a bit on the friendly side. Yes, when they sang songs, a couple people raised their hands. I was like, what are they doing? And some of them asked me questions about my life as if they actually cared. However, what I also felt was that this was a community of messy people trying to follow Jesus, and there might be a little bit more room for me there too. I've now been a Christian for a little over 20 years, and the same is true today. That when it comes to Christmas, it reminds me that there's always room for us. There is a name given to Jesus that we've sung about, that we've read about, Emmanuel, which literally means God with us. The thing is, for so long in my childhood, I thought God was God over there. Or he could have been called God with the holy ones, or God with the special few, or God with a poor taste in music or bad foot sense. But God with us means something. God with us means you don't have to behave your way into his presence. God with us means that you don't have to know anything special to be in his presence. God with us means you don't have to be born into his presence. God with us means that you just have to make space to enter his presence. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the family Jesus was born into. Yes, we've heard that he was born into the line of King David, which sounds super grand and fulfills a ton of prophecies. But if you look a little closer, his family was not all it was cracked up to be. Thing is, King David was a sexual predator who used his influence to gain someone else's wife and have the husband killed. Abraham, who's also in Jesus' line, was a pathological liar, and Isaac was too, his son. Jacob, also in that line, was a manipulative cheat. Judah in that line sold his brother into slavery. Rahab in that line was a sex worker. And Solomon in that line was a love rat. And you think your family's bad around the Christmas table. You think you are too bad. Jesus came into our mess, born into our mess, so that we may see that the invitation is extended to us even when we are still messy. So how can you make room for him this Christmas? Maybe this Christmas, before you do your shopping trip, sit in the car, take some deep breaths and just say, God, as I walk through this shopping mall, be with me. Or before you call that difficult family member to wish them a Merry Christmas, take 1 minute and say out loud or in a voice in your head, God, will you be in this conversation louder than my anxiety? Or as you send your kids to bed on Christmas Eve, lay a hand on their bedroom door and say, God, will you be with us as we unwrap gifts, eat turkey, and watch bad TV? You may want to use this December to read on from the birth story of Jesus. Mark's gospel is only 16 chapters and starts straight on from the birth of Jesus. And it will take the average reader about 45 minutes to read from beginning to end. Who knows what you may find out about this baby who becomes a man, who dies and is risen again, and what that means for you today. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say no to a few invites this year so I can slow down. I'm going to seek moments of silence in my day instead of grabbing my phone so I can let God in. I'm going to make sure that when I'm with my kids or speaking to my family that I'm not near a screen so I can be present and attentive. I'm going to ask my wife how I can help and not just assume she has it all sorted and all together. And I'm going to pray that my life may become simpler so I can have space for God to move in my life. In Japanese culture, there's a concept called ma. Do you want to say ma? Perfect. And ma means negative space. And it's the space that holds nothing being as important as the space that is filled. In Japanese architecture, for instance, a takanoma alcove in a traditional Japanese room is a space or a stage used to display important objects, such as a painting scroll or an art object or a flower arrangement. In ikebana, which is Japanese flower arranging, the space around the flowers is considered to be equally as important as the flowers and plants themselves. And in karate, ma refers to the distance between the two fighters. Knowing the safe distance between oneself and an opponent based on their reach is considered understanding ma. My prayer this Christmas is we see negative space as just as valuable as the space that we fill with things. I discovered another concept this month, JOMO, the joy of missing out. The feeling when you've been invited somewhere and you turn it down to put on your pajamas, have a hot bath, and watch bad Netflix indoors. May you find joy in creating space to let the God who longs to be with you into your life and bring you true fulfillment that lasts. But whatever you do not discount yourself out from being more than a spectator of the life of Jesus. You too could find home and community in the life of Jesus. Here's the truth. Christmas isn't just for the kids. It's not just a good time to get the family together. Christmas is for you. He came for you. Will you make room for him?